Well, a bipartisan group of federal election officials, national security advisors, and a retired U.S. general have formed a coalition to fight election hacking with the aim of establishing protocols that would keep Russians and other state entities from interfering with the voting process.
Joining us on the Kogo News Live line, cybersecurity analyst Shawn Tuma. Do we have any details about how this coalition is going to work?
Well, not a whole lot. We do know they've given themselves a pretty short time frame of 60 days, and they're going to come together and propose some standards that they will, hopefully be able to push down to these localities to help them secure their machines, as well as they're trying to get government funding from the federal level to help these state and local governments pay for the security that they so desperately need.
Now, Shawn, here's the big question. Can we ever prevent hacking?
No, Ted, we're never going to prevent hacking 100% or make it impenetrable. But our goal is always to make it effectively preventable so that it's secure to the point where we have confidence and faith in the system, and we can go back and verify to ensure that nothing has happened after the fact if we need to. So it's to make it more secure, not 100% secure.
You know, at the risk of bringing up the specter of hanging chads, is going back to a paper ballot, is that a way to go?
You know, LaDonna, I thought that was silly up until a couple of days ago when I had a conversation with a company that specializes in mailing ballots. And they were telling me about how efficient their process is. I don't think that's the answer. Technology is a tool, and we have reaped the benefits of technology without accepting the responsibility of securing it for far too long. I think the answer in our elections, just like in our businesses, is to keep using the technology, but to put more of a priority on making it secure along the way, which is what I think this commission is doing, and I think that's a very good thing.
But in an election, voting for president, you said nothing is ever 100%. We can't ever prevent hacking 100%. Don't we need to do that when it comes to electing our commander-in-chief?
Well, we need to make it as reliable as we can. But, elections have been, hacking has become this buzzword that is used in ways that it's not what it means. Hacking means an unauthorized access into a machine. It doesn't mean persuasion or manipulation by using a social network. At this point, elections have been manipulated in the past through, destruction of votes, messing with the old-fashioned machines, all that kind of stuff. That's always going to continue, or people are going to try to do that. The goal here is to make these reliable, and I think we can. Is it 100% in theory? No, nothing is 100% impenetrable in theory. But effectively, can we make them secure? Yes, I think we can. So I don't want to get caught up on the notion of the theoretical question of is it ever 100% secure. I think we can make our voting system very secure and very reliable, and I think that's what we need to do.
All right, security analyst and attorney specializing in computer data, Shawn Tuma. Thank you so much for talking to us again. We appreciate it.
State of Oregon spent $300 million of federal money to create a health care portal, and they were never able to get the simple website to work. So you're supposed to expect us to believe that if the government funds a bunch of money and sends a bunch of money to Oregon, that we're actually going to be able to use it in the proper way?
Well, it's going to take a program with multiple facets. One has to be money, though, because the states and local governments simply don't have the money to pay for the kind of security they need. The second is they have to establish a criteria, a framework, or, a checklist or whatever you want to call it of critical security features that need to be implemented across the board. And this really starts with basic hygiene. And then the third point is they have to go to the manufacturers of these machines and get them on board and make sure that they have security by design from the very inception with putting these, creating these machines, and not just try to bolt on some quick fixes after the fact. That, let's hope, will get them started and at least improve where we are.
Why isn't the onus more on the manufacturers of the machines? I mean, why even get the state involved in it? If my understanding is the way these things works, I mean, the state buys these products and then they contract with them for regular updates and the like. Why should the state even have their hands in this at all when it should be? They should just be forcing the companies that make these things, get your security up to speed on these, or, we're going to fine you.
Well, I think that's part of it. And we're seeing a trend or a slow change in cybersecurity towards trying to hold manufacturers responsible for the security of their devices. And I wouldn't be surprised to see more of that. But the other facet of it is many of the security incidents that we see come from user error. And so it has to be a partnership that involves those who actually implement and use the devices, because many times it's things like they didn't change the default password settings when they're told to, and they have to. They have them connected to the internet at places, or they have USB drives that they leave open. There's all kind of ways that user error can come into this as well. So I think taking a comprehensive approach where you bring all of the key stakeholders in at one time and say, all right, we've got to put together a plan and we've got to make it work. And if we screw up, manufacturer, if it's a fault of yours that should have been fixed or that shouldn't have been there, maybe you then do see some liability on that.
Yeah, but one thing, and I'm going to go back to my original analogy here. Regardless of how much money you throw at states, you can't fix stupid. I mean, you can't.
A great quote, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't fix stupid regardless of how much money you throw at it. I mean, the $300 million that we wasted on our healthcare portal is a great example of that. If the folks are getting these machines and they're not changing the original password, if they're leaving thumb drives plugged into it that shouldn't be there, and a variety of other things, it doesn't make any difference how much money the government sells, stupid or sends. The stupid is stupid. It's not going to fix that.
You're right, and we see that within organizations all the time. You can't make people care. And until we have a culture of caring about security and treating it as the responsibility that it is for using technology and reaping the benefits of technology, and having people adopt security as a way of life, we're not going to fix a lot of that. I mean, we have a lot of people who are great people in this profession that really care about cybersecurity. But we have others that it's just a job. And at 5 o'clock, like Fred Flintstone flying off the dinosaur, they're out of there, and they don't really care what happens till Monday morning. And those are the people, more times than not, who neglect to do the basic things that their job requires them to. And, we don't know the answers to that yet. Some are advocating liability. I've heard some advocate jail. Some are saying, well, people make mistakes, don't be so hard on people. You get the whole gamut there. And we haven't yet figured out where that balance is, but it's a problem. And the people are oftentimes the problem, as you said.
I guess I look at this and I think to myself, how much of this are they actually hoping to accomplish, and how much of this is being done just to simply make it look like they're trying to do something?
Well, I don't want to have my cynical government approach come out on the line. I mean, we know that happens a lot of times.
Sure.
Legislator wants to legislate for every problem out there because that's what gets them reelected, whether it works or not. And in this case, I think these people have good intentions, and I think they want to do the right thing, and they're really trying. Whether it can happen or not is a different question, and I don't know enough about inside, politics to really opine on that. But I think their intentions are good. I hope they can do what they're setting out to do.
All right. Hey, Shawn, thanks for joining us on the Wake Up Call this morning. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
All right. Shawn Tuma joining us on the Wake Up Call. He's a cybersecurity expert. He also is a cybersecurity attorney and litigator.
Do the best we can. How about that?
Yeah, and if you were an advisor, Shawn, and you and I have talked about this, we know that hackers are like velociraptors testing the fences constantly, but what's some good best practices you can recommend to at least try to fend it off? I know what you're saying about most unhackable. You just can't declare it unhackable, but what are some things that you are looking for as a cybersecurity guy that could really improve the security of the system?
Yeah, most breaches, incidents, 90% of the time are a result of poor cyber hygiene. Basics, not complicated stuff. So on a voting machine, don't have it connected to the internet. Make sure your default passwords are changed and are something of sufficient complexity so that they can't be easily guessed. Do not allow people to insert USB drives. Close down your USB ports. Have multi-factor authentication required for anyone to have access to the machine. Those are a couple of basics that apply in our everyday world. Make sure that they're patched. Our security patches are so critical, as we've learned with Equifax. Make sure they're patched timely, and certainly before they're put into use, and that you're always monitoring to make sure that the updated patches are installed when they come out. And then, have a way of auditing the machines. So have a paper record somewhere that's contemporaneous with the use of the machine, that's recording the votes, so that after there's an event, an election, and you are concerned about any kind of manipulation, you can go back and audit to see, was it actually tampered with, or anything changed or not. Those are the kind of things that we should do in our daily lives. And, the last would be analogous to a backup of your data, and that we need to do with these voting machines. And really, it's just a matter of taking cybersecurity seriously. We've enjoyed the benefits of technology for far too long without being responsible on the security side.
Well, and the reason Shawn and I are talking is there's a bipartisan group of federal election officials, national security advisors, and a retired U.S. general. They are going to form a task group, and then they're going to make recommendations of procedures and standards to state and local election officials. Now, Shawn, I would imagine that election systems across the U.S. are very, very different, and one of the things we're ultimately going to be talking about is cost. Is there some items that they're going to recommend that are going to be a massive cost associated with? Because a lot of the things that you're saying, you're right on. It's just stuff that you and I ought to be doing in our everyday life.
Yeah, Jeff, they haven't given us the specifics yet. They're working up a plan, and they've given themselves 60 days to do it. And they've only given us a couple of key kind of global points they want to do. One, they want to make sure there are firewalls around the data, which is good, and that there's a paper backup trail, which is good.
Yeah.
And then the other is they want to pressure Congress to provide funding for a lot of this, and that's really the critical part.
Right.
Funding is the key here, and I think if they can get that kind of funding, it'll help ease the way for the states and local governments to implement this. But then the next step is they've got to tell them what to implement, and that requires standardization of the machines and of the processes for securing them, which is going to require getting the manufacturers of these machines on board with this process.
That is a great point, Shawn. The other thing that just occurs to me is technology makes my life and your life easier, but it seems like to me, when it comes to elections, there's a limit to technology. And the reason I say that is, for example, like you were saying, keep them off the internet maybe some folks have an old-fashioned paper ballot. We actually could advance a little bit too far, couldn't we, in the election process and give hackers more of an opportunity to create some havoc?
Yeah, I mean, what technology and cyber does is it's a new tool for old tricks.
Yeah.
It makes theft and deception more efficient and easier to do. And that's what cyber has done. And so the more we advance, the more opportunity we give bad people to do bad things. But that's why we have to advance our security right along with it, because we know whatever we implement in this 2020 commission, the hackers are going to learn about it, and they're going to start trying to find ways around it. So we're on a journey. There's no destination here, and we have to be vigilant all the time in how we defend against it.
That is cybersecurity analyst Shawn Tuma. Shawn, always a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks very much for joining me this morning.
You're welcome, Jeff. Thank you.
Bipartisan group of federal election officials, national security advisors, retired U.S. generals have formed a coalition to fight election hacking with the aim of establishing protocols that would keep Russians and everybody else out of our business. One of the smartest cybersecurity guys we know, attorney who specializes in computer data, it's Shawn E. Tuma, Frisco, Texas. How are you?
I'm doing great, Stevie J. How are you today? Thank you for that. I'll owe you.
Yeah, you betcha. Okay, so the basic question is, can we be unhackable? I didn't think that was even possible with smart little computer wizards out there.
Yeah, I'm not going to suggest that we can ever be unhackable. I think what they really mean here is the goal is to make it reliable and as unhackable as practically possible under the circumstances. How's that for lawyering up the
That's
sentence?
pretty lawyering up there, Shawn. Why don't we just go back to pencils and papers,
There are people advocating for that, and the problem is, even with pencils and papers, we saw manipulation of votes.
Oh, you mean the box of ballots found in that guy's trunk? Oh yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's a bigger point. This is a human nature problem. It's not a technology problem. People have been manipulating and stealing and cheating from the dawn of time. This is just a new tool being used to accomplish it.
I have suggested that the hearts of men have not changed. We just had spears back then. Now we have bombs.
You're exactly right. And until we solve the human nature problem, we're not going to solve the cybersecurity problem. So we have to treat it.
There's a pill you can take to burn fat while you sleep. Why wouldn't there be a pill to take that you wake up with integrity?
That would be a good one. Until then, we as a society have to accept the responsibility of the technology we're using and start securing our devices and our networks.
Well, we'll do everything we can, but, we're just going to be able to do everything we can. It seems like every time we come up with a new one, there's always a new cheat or a new fix or new break.
There is, but there's a lot of hope too, because when you look back each year at all of these events that happen, these cybersecurity events, you find that roughly 90% of them were a failure of some kind of basic cyber hygiene. It wasn't complicated, James Bond, Russian hacking, type stuff that we like to make it out to be. It's usually people not changing the password, not having a password, losing devices, that kind of stuff. And that's preventable with education.
Yeah, and probably, we say this occasionally, do not have a password 1234, because I could even guess that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Shawn E.
Tuma. Or the exclamation point behind it.
ShawnETuma.com, is that what your website is?
Yes, sir.
Shawn E. SHAWNE Tuma, T as in Tom, UM as in Mary A.com. Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.